Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Australian Aviation Podcast. I am not Adam Thorne. He's away in Canberra. I'm Jake Nelson, but I did have you going there, didn't I? Well, probably not the people in the studio. They can clearly see that I'm not Adam. I have nicer hair. We are here. Yes, I'm here this week, of course, with co-host Chris Fenton.
Jake, how are you?
I'm not too bad. I just got back from a couple of weeks away in Canberra and Melbourne myself. So. Yes, but long-time listeners, as in those who've been listening for more than a week, may remember that I wasn't here a couple of weeks ago. I was in Canberra, and then I went down to Melbourne the other week, and now I'm back. So I think we've sort of traded places now, Adam and I. I was in Canberra, and he was here, and then he's in Canberra, and I'm here. So
yeah, swapperoos.
One day we'll catch each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Chris, I think we've got a couple of shout-outs just to start with this week. Why don't you go first?
Yeah, we do indeed. So, first of all, I want to give an internal shout-out, Jake. So, Jake will know who I'm talking about here, but for our listeners and viewers online, we've got an amazing sub-editor here at Australian Aviation by the name of Sinead.
Love Sinead.
Yep.
Sinead does great work.
Is amazing. She does brilliant work. But Sinead is based in Melbourne, so she doesn't get to see the team much. And is kind of a lone wolf based down in Melbourne, but does brilliant work here at Momentum Media. And one of the publications that she does look after is our own here at Australian Aviation. So funnily enough, Adam and I were in Melbourne last week for a conference, and we had dinner with Sinead. And Sinead actually mentioned that she loves listening and watching the Australian Aviation podcast, and it's her favourite podcast out of all of the podcasts that we do here at Momentum. So
I bet you say that to all the podcasts, Sinead.
So Sinead, special shout out to you. We love the fact that you listen to us as well as edit us. But thank you for that. And one other shout out, Jake, while I've got the shout out mic. A dear friend of mine that I used to fly with many, many years ago reached out to me a few weeks back saying, I was just listening to the Aviation podcast. God, that Chris guy sounded like you. And I was like, it is me. So Lauren, who is a customer service manager at Quantis International, special shout out to you, and thanks for listening, and safe flights, happy landings.
Awesome. Yeah, we love all of our listeners, dear friends, internals, and anyone out there who listens to our podcast. Just know that you are loved.
Absolutely,
you are loved. Yeah, I've got a couple of shout outs myself. Got an email from Mark. Long-time subscriber / purchaser from Perth. He says, loving the podcast, video casts, and he says, make sure you camp outside the Senate when your mate Alan appears soon. You may get that interview over perhaps an espresso martini that you're looking for.
I love it, Mark.
So fingers crossed, Mark. Also want to give a shout out, by the way, she may listen to the podcast, I don't know, but if you're listening, Carly Povey,
yes,
the departing Chief Customer Officer at Bonza, sort of a newsy thing here, but she is leaving the role.
Very sad.
Very, very sad to see her go after helping guide Bonza through its startup phase. She was responsible for a lot of the big sort of branding decisions as chief commercial officer that have really shaped Bonza into the airline that it is. And so she's always I've dealt with her a few times. She's always been lovely, very honest, very straightforward about what's happening at Bonza. We will be sad to see her go, and here's hoping that her replacement can fill the very big shoes that she's leaving behind.
She's been formidable there at Bonza. She's an amazing woman.
Lastly, just a quick shout out to the lovely people at Cebu Pacific. I was at their anniversary lunch a couple of weeks ago to cover that and, find about the future plans for Australia. They are increasing their capacity. But while I was there, I happened to win a contest they were having for the best social media toast. Yeah, so I won a social media post, not toast. They didn't have toast there. They should have. But no, I won a return ticket to Manila. So
awesome.
I've never been to Manila. I'll have to check. I'll have to make like a file to plan for the trip.
Was it 2 tickets or just one?
Just the one ticket.
Just the one?
So I'll have to figure out a way to get my partner over there as well. Maybe smuggle her in my luggage, very large suitcase. I don't know what the baggage limitation is on Cebu Pacific. I'll have to look that up. But
I'm sure you'll be fine.
I'll probably have to make some kind of file to plan for the trip, like a Manila folder or something.
There it is, folks. Have a drink.
Take a drink.
First drink of the episode. Take a drink. But I'd like to know, what was your social media post that won you the competition?
It was basically just saying, just giving an update on what Cebu Pacific was doing. I can read it out. It's enthralling. I can promise you that. The post was increased capacity for Cebu Pacific into Australia from October. 5 weekly Sydney flights, 3 weekly Melbourne flights, and a switch to the A330neo.
And that was it.
That was it. But
that one you were. Wow.
I'm shocked, but they said it sort of perfectly encapsulates what they were there for.
Good on you. Well done. That's awesome.
So yeah, once I go to Manila, I will be sure to deliver my verdict on how Cebu Pacific performed.
Well, do you know what you could do, Jake? I know that you did that podcast recently with the YouTuber who films all these.
Jeb Brooks.
Jeb Brooks. You could become the new Jeb Brooks and podcast your Cebu Pacific experience.
I don't. His beard is far mightier than mine. I know I have a very respectable facial hair, but I don't think I could compete with Jeb.
Fair call. But it'll be a good trip review for the magazine.
Absolutely. Yep. Especially with the A330 Neos. Be interesting to see how that goes. But we've been very rude, Chris.
We have.
We've been sitting here talking past our lovely guest who is in the studio. Chris, how about you introduce this lovely gentleman who has been sitting very patiently waiting for us to shut up.
So we're extremely blessed today to have a colleague of ours from one of our sister publications, Defence Connect. So Ben works with me in the sales team here at Momentum Media and is responsible for the media brand Defence Connect, and he is a media strategist is his correct title. Mm-hmm. However, without his title, media strategist, he is an all-round nice guy, a dear friend. We actually started at the company same day together.
Yeah,
so we're
great.
day one buddies.
Twins. You're twinsies.
That's it, twinsies. Well, there was another guy as well that started the same day as us, young Jack. So we're triplets. So there's three of us that started in the sales team the same day. But however, Ben recently travelled domestically for a holiday or / leisure travel. And we decided to get him on the show to share his experience. So, Ben, tell us all about it.
Well, first and foremostly, thank you for having me on.
Welcome. We love having friends in the studio.
Great chemistry. You
And
two have got
enemies. If we can get any enemies in the studio as well, that'd be fantastic. That'd be a real show.
Well, hopefully that's not me.
Not at all.
But
we'll see.
We'll see how this goes. But no, thanks for having me on. Love Australian Aviation and the podcast and what you guys do, and the content you create. It's fantastic. But happy to give my 2 cents worth from the trip.
Love it.
Well, let's have a shout out for Ben, who's apparently a listener who loves the podcast we've just heard. Mm-hmm. We love the internal shout outs here. So
Absolutely,
Ben,
we do. And I can hand on heart say Ben does listen to the podcast.
So Ben, if you're listening over there, we love you, and it's great to hear that you're a fan of the show.
No, long time. First time, long time. But yeah, well, basically I could just run through the trip itself. I suppose the customer experience side was something that I was not overly impressed with.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, what's the airline?
Jetstar.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so travelling from Sydney to Hobart, down to go see my brother and my nephew and my sister-in-law, and spend some time with them. It was fantastic. I should preface this that I'm not the best flyer as well.
Well, that's why they invented planes, you know.
Well, yeah.
Most people aren't really good flyers.
I can hand on heart say Ben is what we in the industry would call a white knuckler.
Mm-hmm.
He's a white knuckler. So
it's not because I'm a boxer.
He basically grips the armrest or the person's leg sitting next to him, and he does not move.
I've actually had Adam calm me down on a flight or two down to Canberra on the Qantas link, which is a very bonding experience, shall we say. But anyway, so Sydney down to Hobart. This is about 3 weeks ago. It's still pretty bumpy coming down, but that was okay. I mean, pretty happy to get out of to get onto Sydney. I got through customs and whatnot. Security was fine coming through Sydney Airport. On the way back, however, and this was the first flight out of Hobart. I think it was a Tuesday or so. Coming through customs, my bag. I've checked my baggage in. I had bought I think, the 20-kilo package.
Yep.
And had my carry-on baggage through there. Went through customs and security and whatnot. Getting through, and they called the people aboard quite early, and we eventually sat on the tarmac for about 20 minutes or so, which was great, but not. But as soon as I got through, the lady, a couple of the staff there were like, "Oh, okay, is your ticket, please? Yep, okay, here, and we just need to weigh your bag." Now, I had 7 kilos, but it did go over by a kilo or kilo and a half. And then I was told that'll be $65, thanks. Just as soon as you come through, $65, and either that or you're not getting on the plane. So I had a couple of words to say of dissatisfaction, I would think would be the best way to put it. And I actually threw a kilo and a half of stuff out. I had a bag the zip actually broke on the way down. So I said, don't need that anymore. Threw that out. And then just made weight. Sounds like a boxing tournament, doesn't it?
It does a little. I mean, could you? I don't know how viable it is to pass stuff off to your traveling companions who might be having a 3-kilo bag or whatever.
Well, no, it was just myself.
That would.
But I was definitely toying with the idea of to have the bag underneath and my jacket over the top, which I know many people do and then brag about it, which they shouldn't be doing. But I suppose.
Yeah, just go through looking like Quasimodo. Nobody will suspect a thing.
I do have a bad back. But anyway, so we got on there. Now, the flight itself, so eventually got through there and I was told, you can't speak. Well, there was some communication issues. But eventually got on the ball. I got on the flight and we sat in the tarmac for a little bit. But the staff, to their credit, again, because we did go up and down, it was coming out of Hobart.
That
is not
is
fun.
how planes work.
Yes, well, also the turbulence wasn't great, but to the staff's the crew's credit, they were fantastic, just to help us.
All right, so a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
Did you pay the $65?
I did not. No.
Well done. But
what were some of those possessions that you were eager to part with?
Well, some of my business cards and the backpack itself, to the point where I actually got Hobart Airport called me up 2 days later and they're like, we found this bag here. This is yours. I'm like, your service is somewhat better than some airlines.
Fair call.
Yeah.
So they were going to charge you. You got rid of some of the weight, and did they reweigh the bag?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah,
cool. Did you see other people getting weighed and charged?
Not the charging point, the weighing part, I think, but and I think there was a family before me of like 3 or so that weighed some stuff themselves and then threw some stuff out. So it's a very common occurrence.
Okay, and was your flight full?
It was pretty full. Yeah. Could have been maybe about half a dozen seats, I think, down the back.
Okay.
Not full, but it was pretty full.
And coming out of Sydney on your flight down to Hobart, were they weighing and checking cabin bags?
No, not like that. So,
okay.
It's more for myself. It's more just the audacity of a crew, and I know it's their job. And I do apologise if they're listening out there for probably not being as pleasant to deal with as what I should be. But, they've got rules in place. But just to go through and sting you with $65, which is some money to people, and then just the confrontational audacity of it. And to a larger extent, this is where I think Qantas and definitely Jetstar need to improve if they want to get loyalty back. Yep. Is being able to more customer centricity, but just don't sting people like that.
And I guess if the ground agent was going to charge you $65 but still let you carry the bag on board, what's the point of weighing and checking bags? Jetstar are certainly not Ryanair. Nowhere in its terms and conditions have I read do they stipulate that cabin bags. Well, they definitely stipulate cabin bags must not weigh more than 7 kilos, but nowhere do they mention if the bag weighs more, you will be charged in order to carry it on. So bit of a questionable act, I would say. But also, I think there needs to be a level of consistency here, Jake, too. If it's if it's done at one port, it should be done at all ports.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Chris, you've had every job in aviation short of flying the plane.
Thanks, Adam.
So, Chris, you've had every job in aviation short of flying the plane. You're a long-time cabin manager. I mean, you'd know about the customer experience back to front.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess this is where it's really important. There's a right way to deliver the message, saying, Ben, unfortunately, your bag is slightly over our limits that we permit. You're welcome to take some or remove items out of your bag. However, if those items are of importance, we will need to charge you a fee to check your bag in. Doesn't mean you can take the bag on board. Obviously, there's safety requirements that bags need to be a certain weight. But I guess the only real time I've seen people walk around weighing cabin bags is when a flight is full and they're worried about overhead luggage space.
Sure.
But if it's not consistent, how do passengers know? And we now live in an age where passengers or customers are no longer loyal to a particular brand. So you may fly down Virgin, fly back Jetstar. You may fly Qantas one direction, fly Rex in another. It's whatever's cheaper fare. Gone are the days of a return ticket. It's now often transactional one-way tickets. So look, I think there certainly needs to be a right way and a wrong way, and there needs to be consistency around Australia. And we've spoken a lot on this podcast about the inconsistencies and lack of customer care in the Qantas group. This is just another example.
I mean, I think you go to just about anyone on the street who's flown, and the chances are, unfortunately, they'll probably have a Jetstar Horror story. I mean, I've had a Jetstar Horror story which involved a full flight, a flimsy sick bag, and I'll leave the rest to the imagination. But no, it was not a good time. It is an interesting because I actually had an experience. I flew to Melbourne with Virgin when I went down to Melbourne a couple of weeks ago. I actually flew on points because I'd sort of amassed enough velocity points between things and flybys, and I had an experience which otherwise sort of might have made people very cross, but I came away sort of almost satisfied with it. There was, one of those high wind days at Sydney Airport again where they have to go to single runway operations. And so the flight that I was originally planning to take was cancelled. And, you had a situation with Quantis in Canberra, I think, a few weeks ago. We were talking about on the podcast where a flight was cancelled and you had no idea what was going on. Virgin, to Virgin's credit, I got an email that morning saying, unfortunately, we've had to cancel your 4 o'clock flight. We have put you on a flight 3 hours later. We're sorry for the inconvenience. We had to, wait a little longer in the terminal. The flight was delayed about half an hour because the plane was late coming in from Brisbane. But we were sort of updated as things were going on. The staff was sort of letting us know planes late out of Brisbane. We'll, be leaving at about this time, arriving to Melbourne about this time. And I found that actually once we got on the plane, we'd actually been the seats we'd been allocated, and I don't know if this is because they were the only seats that were free or by way of recompense, but we were actually put in Economy X seats.
Oh, wow.
We were put in Economy X on the flight down to Melbourne, which was quite nice. Some nice leg room there. And I only wish that we'd spotted the Economy X on the boarding passes so that we didn't have to wait around for general boarding. But all in all, I came away, pretty satisfied with that experience with Virgin because they let you know what was going on up front, and I got like an unexpected bump up into a higher class.
Yep.
So that was nice.
That's what it should be like. Delays should be communicated as early as possible to passengers and travelling public. And I guess when we've been talking a lot about the abuse of the slot system here in Sydney, knowing that 1 in 5 flights between Sydney and Melbourne are cancelled each day by the competitors, it's good that a delay was communicated to you. You being Australian Aviation were obviously aware. Bad winds, Sydney's down to one runway.
Yeah, and this was, I want to stress, this was not Virgin's fault.
No.
This was not Virgin's fault. If there is only one runway operating, then flights are going to have to be cancelled, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But, and it wasn't their fault, but still they made an effort to communicate clearly what was going on and sort of get me on that. I woke up to the email saying that my flight was cancelled and an email saying, we've put you on this flight.
Yeah. Which is the way it should be. And I guess to go back to Ben's story, he's had a bad experience on the ground, but you've gone on to say the onboard crew, the cabin crew, were fantastic.
Yeah, they were great.
Which is often the way. And I guess this is what a lot of people forget. You can have a bad experience leading up to the time you board the plane, and you can take all of that frustration on board the plane with you. Cabin crew are the final, I guess, engagement / nail / impression where they can make or break your journey. Yeah. And had that crew had been a bad crew for you, you just would have come away scathing of Jetstar.
No, they were very helpful. I don't know how you guys do it, going up and down, and supposedly turbulence is quite fun.
It's the best part.
Yeah, well, it's just, the bell's on, fantastic. Oh, we're stopping service, fantastic. It's hats off to you guys. Definitely a massive found respect for what the crew do, and of course both on the ground and on the aircraft. But we'll moving forward, I suppose I'll probably be checking my bag carriage, but also or the weight, but also have some stuff that I could easily dispose of in case.
I guess if there was that consistency there, more passengers would know about it and be better prepared for it. So I guess the moral of the story is consistency is key when it comes to service with the airlines. Ben, thanks for joining us.
No
Absolutely. I loved having you on to talk about your experience.
Yeah, no worries. Well, I look forward to another Qantas link trip down to Canberra soon, and if so, hold my hand.
When I went to Canberra, I drove, so that sort of cut the airlines out of the equation entirely.
Fair enough.
Heresy though that may be to say on this show.
Sure. No. Anyway, thanks guys. I've got to duck off and get back to it.
We will let you go, Ben, and we're going to go for a quick break. But when we get back, we're going to crack on with some of the week's news. All right, welcome back. So you're listening to the Australian Aviation Podcast. I'm still not Adam Thorne, but I think I'm getting better. What do you think, Chris?
Doing a cracking job.
Thank you. I got to get the hair and the glasses ready for next time.
And the cup of tea.
Yeah, no, I've forgotten the cup of tea. That's very remiss of me. But I think I suppose we were talking a bit about Qantas and Jetstar beforehand. We should probably lead with some of the bigger news of the last couple of weeks, just with relation to Qantas. Richard Goyder, the chairman of Qantas, this was last week. He announced that there's been significant public pressure on him to step down, following the exit of Alan Joyce and all of the bad press that Qantas has been receiving in recent weeks. He has announced that he will be retiring before the 2024 AGM. He said he's served as chair since 2018. He says it's part of a larger board renewal. He says the board recognises that accountability is required to restore trust. He says, quote, Qantas has gone through an incredibly difficult period since our operation was grounded during the pandemic. The recovery has not been easy and mistakes were made. We again apologise for those times where we got it wrong. I've always sought to act in the best interests of Qantas. Measured and orderly succession at board level will support the important work underway led by Vanessa and her new management team. Fundamentally, the group is in a very strong position to overcome its current challenges and deliver for all its stakeholders in the years ahead. Now, this has come after, basically volleys from all corners, telling him he needs to resign. He told The Australian in September that he was fully committed to continuing on and overseeing the transition to Vanessa Hudson. But now it seems that he is also going to hang up his hat, Chris.
Come to his senses, more like it. I get there's a new CEO at the helm, but while Goyder and the board remain, Vanessa can't lead the way Vanessa wants to lead. There's too much of Alan Joyce era there, and it's, I guess, out with the old, in with the new. It's hey, hey, ho, ho, Goyder's got to go. But I think it's poor form of him to delay what's coming. Like,
well, we've had this sort of discussion before as well, didn't we? When Alan Joyce announced that he was going to quit at the 2023 AGM, we were asking, well, why so long? You know, why are you taking such a long transition period to retire when you could just, say, I'm leaving in a month?
Exactly.
Why, if Richard Goyder is focused on board renewal and, on getting out of the way and taking accountability, why is he not stepping down for some indeterminate? All we know is it's going to be before November next year.
Yep.
So it could be sort of any time before then. He should really, if he's going to go and if he's going to provide a clean break and a fresh start, he should say, this is when I'm leaving. It will be no later than such and such.
Exactly right. Just let it go, move on. He is still on so many other boards with so many other companies. Go to them, put your focus and attention to them, and let Qantas get on rebuilding, rebranding, and coming out the other side of this.
At some point, you've got to say, you're going to be kidding me.
Have a drink, folks.
Have a drink. Another high-profile departure from Qantas, and this was just yesterday as we're recording. It is Tuesday that we're recording, but the announcement that Olivia Worth, the CEO of Qantas Loyalty, is leaving Qantas next year to pursue other opportunities. So she first joined the carrier in 2009. She was seen as one of these leading contenders to replace Alan Joyce in the role that eventually went to Vanessa Hudson. But she says at its core, Qantas is an incredible company and brand. She says it's been a massive part of her professional life. She's grateful for the opportunity she's been given. She's proud of what the team at Loyalty has achieved. She says she's looking forward to delivering more improvements for members before she leaves. Now, Chris, do you think that this might be sort of in response to her being passed over for the top job? Because there's been a lot of speculation around that.
Look, there certainly could be part of that playing on her mind. I've read reports, don't know how true they are, never believe everything you read in the media except for Australian aviation, that she's off to Maya.
Maya
have snagged her. I know that there's been a lot of attention brought to the frequent flyer side of the business of late, that reward seats are impossible to get. There's not enough there. So the loyalty side of the business has copped a bit of a kicking lately. Could it be seen as part of that? Well, you're part of the problem. You have to go. Was she forced out the door? I guess the only people that will know that are the board and her. Hard to say, Jake, but I guess we wish her well in wherever Maya land next.
Yeah, you're going to have to work on that one.
Yeah, I know. Got to work on it.
Yeah, it might or might not have been a good one.
Have a drink, folks.
There we go. But one thing that's interesting to consider is that Qantas Loyalty, during the dark days of COVID lockdowns, Qantas Loyalty was one of the programs that was really propping up Qantas. It was one of the things that was sort of still delivering a profit and keeping the airline going.
Look, they had some fantastic purchases during the COVID lockdown. Hook, line and sinker fell for some of the sales that they ran. Stupid, silly little things, but they hooked me in. Like, you could get in-flight pajamas with some of the famous business class or first class nuts that they serve on board, with a few other, and some Tim Tams and
first
things like
class
that.
Nuts, politicians.
First class nuts, yeah, politicians. And Tim Tams and things like that for a couple of thousand points, and I certainly took advantage of that. They get discounted some cool Qantas merchandise, and they were quite clever in things that would either A, go out of date or season, obviously valuable to the airline, catering equipment and supplies. Let's get rid of them via the loyalty side of the business. And they did that well. So the loyalty side of the business definitely weathered the storm well.
So segueing a bit from Qantas, we have, of course, the Senate inquiry into Qatar and the decision surrounding that, and how much of involvement Alan Joyce and Qantas had in that decision. It came out, a week or two back that the Senate committee sort of handed down its report. This was one chaired by Bridget McKenzie. It had asked for an extension so that it could interview Alan Joyce. It also recommended that the government immediately review the decision to deny Qatar the right to increase its services into Australia. Now, we got a release from Bridget McKenzie this morning, just sort of reminding us of what the inquiry had recommended. The Select Committee recommended immediately reviewing the Qatar Airways decision, immediately reinstate ACCC monitoring of domestic airlines, which I think we can both agree with.
Absolutely.
Urgently respond to the Harris review into the Sydney airport slots. Again, a point we can both agree with. Strengthen competition in domestic aviation, including investigating divestiture powers. Implement consumer protection reforms for travellers, and seek to extend the Select Committee to hear from Alan Joyce and Minister Catherine King. So most of those seem to be fairly uncontroversial points. I think the sticking points are kind of the Qatar Airways review and the extension of the committee to hear from Alan Joyce and Minister King. And I think that these are the points that really Catherine King was highlighting when she called the whole inquiry, quote, a ridiculous farce. She said that she effectively ruled out reviewing the Qatar Airways decision, which has received so much oxygen in the media over the past few months. She said, quote, a very politicised Senate inquiry is asking the Australian government to do something the previous government was unable and unwilling to do in its 9 long years in office. It did not increase Qatar Airlines access to Australia by 28 flights. It did not fix the slot system in Sydney. It did not fix all the consumer issues when it came to airlines in this country. She said, I'm not going to be listening to a highly politicised Senate inquiry that just saw, frankly, a ridiculous farce of Bridget McKenzie running around the country with her empty chairs, bringing people over to Western Australia. All of the evidence has been heard from over there in the country, and so if you read the dissenting report, that's the government's response.
Boom tish. Look, a couple of things there, Jake. Did Qatar request an increase of flights under the former government?
We don't know.
We don't know. So
at least I don't know. If you know, tell us.
Yeah, exactly. So, what I'm quite sick of in the political landscape here at the moment is obviously we're under a Labor government. I don't care what way you voted, but all we're hearing out of the Liberal Party at the moment is, when you were the opposition, you didn't do this. And then all we're hearing out of the Labor government at the moment, when you were in power, you didn't do this. It's basically a he said, she said, you didn't game. Get on and rule the bloody country already.
I do think that when you were the government, you didn't do this has slightly more of a has slightly more what's the word? Slightly more cut through than when you were the opposition, you didn't do this, because what can the opposition do exactly?
Very true. But it's such a blame game at the moment. Well, you didn't do this when you were in government, and you didn't do this and you didn't do that. Who cares who didn't do it? You're being asked to do it now, so consider it. And for Catherine King to come out and say she will not be reviewing the decision, she's clearly not listening to the Australian people who are saying, let them fly. She is clearly not listening to the thousands of people that work in the tourism sector saying, let them in, let them fly. She's not listening to the travelling public that say, we want an option. Qatar are prepared to up and increase their flights to Australia. It's great for our economy. It's more jobs, more money, more this. I can't see the problem with doing it.
I think it's something that Adam said. He said, if there had been more clarity up front, If they just come out and said, this is why we're not letting Qatar Airways in, then there wouldn't be a problem.
Very true.
How was that one?
I loved it. But she came out and said that part of her decision was made because of how the female passengers were handled back in 2022.
2020, yeah.
2020, yeah.
And I think, there's been some news stories where, some of those passengers have sort of come forward and come out against the Qatar against Qatar being allowed to fly more flights, understandably so from their perspective. I think it all just comes back to, Catherine King has said that was a factor in the decision, or she said that it wasn't a factor in the decision, but it was context for the decision. Yeah, all this political talk. But basically, it comes back to, if the minister had come out and said, we are not allowing Qatar to fly more flights into Australia because they acted so reprehensibly, because of this disgusting incident, that would have sort of enabled the government to bring more people along, because at least there was a reason, and it would be a reason that people can understand.
Yep, exactly right.
All right, welcome back. You're listening to the Australia Aviation Podcast. Once more, I'm not Adam Thorne. I am Jake Nelson. We have one more story, and it is part of a sort of a longer-running saga. The saga, once again, Chris, of the Sky Kittens.
I love our Sky Kittens.
We love Sky Kittens here, but they do not love Sky Kittens or their purring in Brisbane. There was a Greens bill put forward this week to essentially introduce caps and curfews on airline traffic at Brisbane Airport, sort of in line with the sort of thing they have at Sydney. Now, that was knocked back. It was knocked back by the government. Essentially, the government said they would not support it, and this has been an ongoing flashpoint at Brisbane Airport. So much, ink has been spilled and so many words have been said about this whole saga of, should there be caps and curfews? Should there be airlines flying so late over Brisbane Airport? Do they need a curfew? How can we mitigate the noise without putting in a curfew, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? But this bill, Elizabeth Watson-Brown, the transport spokesperson for the Greens, said, quote, "The Greens put forward a simple common sense bill that would have legislated three things: a curfew from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., a cap on total flights per hour, and a long-term plan for more flights over the water. But despite these being similar regulations fought for both by Anthony Albanese and Kevin Rudd in the past, Labor has failed to support them today." Now, Brisbane Airport Corporation has also come out and released this economic modelling by economist Nick Behrens, saying that caps and curfews would cost 16,414 jobs in regional Queensland, cut regional economic activity by $1.5 billion, and reduce regional Queensland flights by 3,100, translating to 239,000 fewer passengers in the 2026 financial year. Obviously they would say that, yep. But it does raise an interesting point about this connectivity between Brisbane and the regions, doesn't it?
It does indeed. And I guess what we have to remember is we live at the bottom end of the world. So in order to connect somewhere, in order to connect to Europe, the flight times need to be the flight times so we can still land at a respectable time somewhere at the other end of the world. Airlines put a lot of time and effort into, they don't just wake up one morning and go, "Oh, I feel like I'll operate a Brisbane-Dubai sector at 1 a.m. in the morning because why not?"
Maybe they should add a little spontaneity to the situation, spice things up.
But there's a reason that time is chosen, and it's rest period for the crew. It's so the aircraft can be at a particular point to carry on a network, to offer connectivity to passengers to the greater network. It's a big working beast, and look, like I've said before, they just need to get over it up there in Brisbane. It is what it is. A handful of airlines have successfully now trialled flights out over Moreton Bay, and it's worked well, reducing the Sky Kitten purring. And in order to move on and build a better Australia and bring more tourists into Australia, we need the planes flying.
Well, there was a breakthrough as well, a week or so before this bill was introduced, where Singapore, Emirates and Cathay Pacific basically agreed to increase the tailwind speed that they were willing to fly at Brisbane. So they said normally CASA rules limit airlines to flying at 5-knot tailwinds, but airlines and pilots can opt in to accept higher tailwinds at that discretion. So Singapore, Emirates and Cathay all agreed to fly in up to 7-knot tailwinds in order to alleviate the purring for locals, yep. which I think is a good step.
Absolutely. It's community, it's it's sector working with community to come up with a solution. So well done to those airlines involved.
And this will allow them to fly more flights over Moreton Bay instead of over populated areas. So that's basically the victory that has sort of been achieved there.
Yep.
Moving forward. It's important to sort of balance, the needs of people who live beneath flight paths with the needs of, with the needs of passengers, with the needs of, the economy, with the needs of there's a lot of different stakeholders.
Yeah. And look, I remember when the second or the third runway at Sydney was being built, there was a massive no aircraft noise party trying to get the third runway blocked. And as part of the solution, all people living under the affected flight path would have their homes, windows and doors double glazed to alleviate noise and reduce it to a suitable decibel. And I'm sure the same would have been offered in Queensland as well. I think this is just a bunch of yuppies on their soapbox who need to step down now.
Well, I actually, in Marrickville, speaking of Sydney, I was driving through Marrickville the other day and I saw just passing overhead. I swear if I spat up out my car window, I could have hit it, but just a giant Qatar A380 just flying, it seemed
Isn't it magical?
Yeah, it seemed like meters over my head. I'm not a religious man, Chris, but I was making my peace with whatever gods were listening at that moment.
It's such a magical view, and they're so close you could touch them.
Could, but probably shouldn't.
Exactly right.
All right, well, that's all about all the time we have for this week. But I'd like to thank my two co-hosts, Chris Fenton. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, sir, for having me.
And thank you, Jake. Thank you, me. It's been a pleasure having me on. It's always a pleasure having you on. That's it for the Australian Aviation Podcast. We will be back next week. But for now, from us, goodbye.
Bye-bye.